All right, traders, good afternoon. This is Christian from Hertz Trade Group, and today is Thursday, August 12th. We got one more day of the trading week to continue. Theme of the day is that the grind continues, especially for S&P. We will go over the charts of the indices in the first 5 or so minutes. Again, I always go through the bigger picture first, and then I drill down to some sectors as well as single stocks. I'll cover about 10 single stock charts in this video. Risk disclaimer in front of you: everything that we're going through here is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Everything we're talking about here is for education purposes only. If the video is a little bit blurry, YouTube takes a while to render the high definition video, so just give it a little bit more time for them to do their thing. So let's get to the performance for the day. The Qs, kind of jumps out to me because they've been weak the last couple days, and growth has been a little bit weak. But we saw a nice reversal today, so it kind of seemed like the selling was a little bit exhausted. Whoever had to lighten up in growth, it seemed like we saw some selling programs wash through. It seems like those abated, and we had a nice rebound. A little bit after the first hour or so of the day. The S&P kind of continues to do its thing here, up 28 basis points. Small caps are a little bit of the problem area. They it's just kind of very symbolic of this tape right now. The small caps were actually leaning higher this morning, and then gave back some of those gains, and were weak during the session. I just wanted to go over. Sorry, I was just losing my train of thought here, but I wanted to talk about first the economics of the day, right? So we had PPI, right, that came in higher than expected, right? So that was 1% versus 0.6, right? So that was a little bit contrary to what we saw in the CPI. I did hear this, which I haven't heard this before. I heard this listening to Bloomberg earlier, that PPI is a little bit lagging and CPI is a little bit more forward-looking. I've never heard that before, but something that I'll look into. But maybe that's why there wasn't so much of a reaction with this. And then the other thing that happened today was the 30-year bond auction. And I don't love to look at these things, but there's a lot that's being affected by a jump in yields. So if you look at this, I think that came in just a touch. The yield came in just a touch higher than what they were expecting. So there wasn't that much of a jump. Here it is, 2.04. So it was like 1 basis point higher than where it was previous to the auction. So again, we cover things that are kind of relevant to the market, and things that can upset the apple cart a little bit. But you could see that there just there wasn't that much volatility. We did move back to a little bit lower again on the open, which has kind of been the trend. But right around this 10 o'clock, S&P just grinded higher the whole day. Again, not such a big movement, but and then the similar thing too with Qs looked like they were going to be a little bit problematic, like they have been this week. And notice they found support. Bottom of value was a little bit of a touch off of that. And we have not taken out the highs or anything like that. But again, nice to see a little bit of a rebound, and to have a little bit of some things to be able to trade through that rebound. But we're going to talk a little bit about strategy too. Let me just get through the rest of the macro review. But I think the strategy is so important, and having the right game plan as adapting to what this market is giving you. Again, I find myself every once in a while, forgetting what type of a market we're in. Of course, it's not the 2020 market, but every once in a while you kind of forget, right? You want to let your winners run as much as possible, but it's been very difficult to let some winners run, or to stay in some trades. I gave an example a couple days ago about how I was in a couple names like Shopify and Crowdstrike, and trying to let those positions work the right way. And if they don't, you got to get out. in my opinion, right? Unless you're a long-term investor, right? A lot of times what I'm referring to in these videos is, swing trading, right? So not so much long-term investing. It's a completely different thing if you're long-term investing, and sometimes for quality names, you actually want them to come down because you can add, if you've got a 10, 20-year plus time horizon. But if you're trading on a day-to-day basis, my process is to be very disciplined and let the price action speak to me, versus, I'm always going to have ideas and trade ideas, but the price action is the thing that's going to be right. Right, not my conviction, not how confident I am. We were just talking about a name which I'm not going to go over, but there's one name that is so heavily touted on Twitter, and the name is horrible. And if you go to their site, they've got nothing going on their site. It looks like it's an online version from something from the early 90s, but it is so heavily touted on Twitter, and it's really everything that I try to get away from in terms of my trading process. Right, I see this name down again on earnings, and people are buying the dip in this name, because I get it. They don't want to admit that they're wrong, and now they've got to buy more now that the name is down. It's such a horrible spot to be in. It's very much junior varsity, to be trading like that, to be like, oh, the name is down, now I've got to buy more. It's ridiculous. But I encourage you. I'm not going to mention this name because it's such a waste of time, and I'm already spending too much time on it. Other than, when I started my career, I would do stupid things like that, right? If I was in a name that was $20, right, and if it went down, instead of telling myself and getting over your ego, if the name drops through support and let's say it goes to $15, instead of buying more at 15, just realizing that there's better opportunities. The stock is telling you something by breaking down, right? And also, like some of these names, like this one in particular that I'm referring to, go to their website. Tell me what looks so great on their website, right? That makes you so passionate about this particular name, right? And instead of trying to listen and follow people on Twitter who are gonna just cost you money. But anyway, I'll get over that. But it's just so funny that the way that this trading universe works on Twitter, it doesn't matter what you know. It matters like how many followers you have and how confident you sound rather than your trading ability. So anyway, let's move on because today was I think a pretty good trading day in terms of opportunities. I mentioned I would go over sectors, which I always do. There wasn't really that many huge outperformers, but like I said, the range of the day was pretty good. Your software names outperformed. Biotech did pretty good. Medical devices did pretty good today too. Some internet names did well. So what's interesting about this, and this is where kind of like the strategy comes into play. You've heard me for the last couple of days talk about the industrials, the materials, the financials, the home builders, right? Those have acted very well, but at the same point, and if I didn't mention this in yesterday's video, I apologize. But some of these things you have to take your profits, right, into some of these moves. So for example, like some of these things like XLB, I mentioned, I rolled, this position, but I got out of it. It hit upside targets where I thought it could get to on the chart. Same thing with XLI, the industrials ETF. Now I'm still in the ITB, the home builders, and I like this chart, and I'm going to stay with it for a little bit until the price action, tells me otherwise. But this can come in a little bit, and possibly I can kind of add into a better spot. But this market just will continue to rotate in and out of certain areas because the way it's going right now is, I think what a lot of funds are doing is, certain names will work for them, and then they'll take their money and they'll pull it from there. They'll realize that there may be something else that might be a little bit more appetizing and rotate into some other areas of the market. Now, once those areas that they took profits from, they don't necessarily dislike those names any longer. Once they come in a little bit, then they become more appealing. And, I think that's what basically happened with the software names, coupled with, that's a really nice bar, right, for the IGV ETF, coupled with some good earnings reports, right? This is a growth name, but this name continue to go higher. We talked about this in the video from the other day, and using this VPOC, this at 155, to basically use how to play a gap up here. And I said, hey, if as long as it holds this 155 level, you could trade against that level, just kind of forget about the gap up. Right, so that worked really well. The name that I have been giving a hard time for a long time, this Unity software, what a beast this thing has been, right? And one of the things that I've talked about too is not being perma anything, right? I've hated the price action in this name for the last like 4 months, but it's now doing something different, and it had a good earnings report, and the price action is very good off of that earnings report, off of that initial reaction. Notice we took out that VPOC to the downside, we took this thing out, right? That's often where we see these reversals. The only thing that's concerning with this name is that it's going to be battling some overhead. There's going to be probably some overhead supply in this name. The Virgin point of controls are going to tell you where that overhead supply is. So, this kind of got to the 120 level, faded just a little bit into the moving averages, and we took out another one of these VPOCs. So if you're interested in this name, I'll kind of give you a similar strategy as I mentioned with the Upstart. Basically, you wait until this thing gets back above 127 and then use that as your stop, right? That's how I would play this name going forward. Also note, that's on the 1 hour time frame. There's also this one other VPOC, or you may want to wait until to see what it does at 129. Maybe it kind of puts in some type of a flag and back and fills a little bit. That would make me kind of get back involved in the name. So I would be mindful that you got not only those two VPOCs were taken out on the 1 hour, but you also have one right in front of it. So that's what I would be watching, for this to get taken out, and then maybe a little bit of digestion, and then let it build, and then see if we can get back up to this 148 level. That's kind of the plan for this. And I think with these names that have these types of reactions, you have to develop some type of a game plan. Where you're going to get in, where you're going to get out, right? One of the most important things is realizing not just where you're going to get in, but where, definitely where you're going to get out, right? If it does start to move back a little bit too much. Okay, so planning out your trade is a big thing at the Tribeca Trade Group. All right, some other areas. I mentioned the medical device group. Nice to see a couple names in here. INMD, which was very weak the last couple days. It's another growth name that got hit pretty hard. I did add to this the other day, so this is recovering quite well. HCNP, more a biotech name. This name, had a nice breakout, gapped up. Digestion, excuse me, and now you get a nice green bar. So this was a name that I added to this morning, right? You could see I was going after growth today a little bit more, right? Going after growth, right? Datadog was another name that I added yesterday, but this is nice. I'm looking to take a target like somewhere in here. Right, right around this top of value, maybe a little bit shy of it. Datadog had a decent day, up 1.6% for the day. Also kind of caught, this support in here. I looked at this name a couple times in here, but I believe I took a target in this one. 130 paid 126, and then leave the rest on for possible runner. A couple names look familiar. Sorry. I can't speak today in today's video, but looked familiar, or sorry, not familiar, similar. So ZS was one of those names, right? Very strong name. Every time this thing is pulled back a little bit, it's found some support at the 20-day moving average. Did the same thing today. I took some calls in this one. tough name to buy stock in because it's $240, but took some profits. And I'm holding the last piece of this. So I took 2 targets in this one. So again, trying to take a couple targets here and there just because of the way that this market is moving. Next one I wanted to talk about was Apple. Really nice move here. Been watching this one for like a week, since they announced their new iPhone is coming out, and I think I mentioned this in yesterday's video. It doesn't sound like there's like that many crazy features. Nothing too exciting, that I saw, but just the fact that people are waiting to upgrade. And I talked to somebody yesterday, and they've got an older version of the iPhone, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm waiting for the new one to upgrade." Right? It's just an excuse, right? Hey, I might as well wait for the new iPhone to come out to upgrade. So, this is a nice chart pattern. Remember, they had strong earnings. They've been kind of going back and forth, and now you got a level to trade against, right? Top of value is right around this 148 level. Right, so here's your break of the downward trend line, and you also have a break of value. So I did get long some Apple on that. Waited for the alert to go off, and you could see once again hit hit another one, 2 targets. I came into today wearing a little bit of Crowdstrike. Again, found the bounce in Crowd, and I'm out. Right. Sometimes I'm looking for those trades that I kind of add at the end of the day. DraftKings. Well, both DraftKings and Penn, you've got a little bit of a catalyst now for these stocks, right? I haven't really liked these stocks at all because they've been acting so poorly, but football season is coming up. If there's ever a time for this stock to rally, I think it would be now. I like to say this. I said this to somebody back in March, and somebody proceeded to want to tear me up on Twitter. I said, "Hey, watch this name going into March Madness. It's a good name." And I said it will probably do a little bit of a run up into March Madness, like it did for the Super Bowl. And somebody was like, "Oh, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I'm a long-term holder of this." Okay, well, look, that was when the stock was at 68, $69. It's down to 54. So I like to trade this stock when there's a catalyst. I get it. If you want to be a long-term holder, that's fine. But this stock is going to move on catalysts. Look at what it did last football season, right? Here's August. Here's September, right? Rallied all the way into October. So yeah, I'm looking for this thing. So I got long this name. I'm looking for this thing to get to 58, maybe possibly 60. But that's it. Just for a quick catalyst trade. I like this chart a little bit better than Penn. Penn, if I decide to get involved in this name, I'll be late in it, right? I would like to see this name. Some people who don't have the market value areas are probably saying, "Hey, you got a nice turn here," right? And it's acting better. And maybe where this thing is 73 to 76 is a good enough trade for somebody, but it's a little bit too tight. I would be looking for a little bit of a bigger percentage move than that. But you could see you've got some resistance. Notice that the first time it tried to break value in the 50-day moving average, it wasn't able to do it. Maybe this time it could do it. All right. Couple other names I was going to go through here. 2 other software names that were strong today. Look at this Asana. See the similar pattern here. Low volume pullback and boom, right? Pullback right into support and strong. Same thing with this one. Another software name. A little bit more than a low volume pullback. This was some decent volume on this pullback. It did, I think, stop at a little bit of short-term resistance. It actually made it into value for the day. But watch what it does around this 203 level. Couple other ones. Tesla's got a pretty nice looking chart pattern to it. It's tight in here. The only thing I don't like is you have this red line up here, virgin point of control. So it may stop it in its tracks at this 732 level. But I like this bunched up here. A little bit of a flag pattern post earnings. One to watch for tomorrow and maybe the next day. Square. Had this big move about a week ago. This one, you can see, the volume has been starting to dissipate a little bit here, but here's your breakout, testing new highs, and then coming in into the 20-day moving average. This would be an optimal place for a bounce. All right, so I'll be watching that one tomorrow. All right, what else? One is we'll end on a real positive one. Doximity, new name. Look at this thing, up 12%. So again, you continue to have this momentum in these stocks, especially newer names, thinner names that have really good earnings. They're moving up pretty decently. A couple movers after hours. Disney, not a name that really moves that much on earnings, up to 189. You could see the earnings history for Disney. That's why I didn't take anything. I only will take names that have a really good earnings history. You have this one nice quarter back in here, but you could see Disney's not the best name on earnings, but making a nice move, bucking the trend today. Disney. Airbnb had great numbers, but they kind of warned, basically saying that the Delta variant might cut into their profits. So that's why this stock is down. But stellar numbers, but I guess they're going to be affected by that along with every other travel name or reopening stock. So that's what you got in this name. Such a frustrating name, this Airbnb. Right? It just started to kind of poke its head above value, right to where it was before. I still think, and we covered this name in the trading room earlier in the week, I think that there's a seller up here. Look at this name get to around the same level, 153, 154, and this name just cannot get over the hump. I was in this name back here, and I just noticed every time this thing tried to get going, it just appeared to be that there was a seller just smashing this name down. So there's a seller that lives up there around 154, 155. I don't know if they were selling it after hours, but I think legitimate reason why the stock is down. If they're seeing bookings trail off because of COVID, it is what it is. All right, guys, that's it for today's video. The last bottom line I will say for the day, right? As we continue to grind higher like this, right, and we're going to have these things to kind of worry about with when does tapering. When do they start the tapering process and so on and so forth. I will remind you with this, right? With the way that this market is going like this, no one knows how long a trend is going to last, right? And it's one of the things that I've really adopted in my trading over the last few years is becoming a trend trader. I'm just realizing that no one knows when a trend is going to last. Now, you could be smart, right? And I don't want. Sorry, maybe that's the wrong word to use. You could follow your process, take off some risk when we get extended and so forth. But there's been a lot of people, right, that have been looking for a correction in August, or thinking a correction is coming. That may very well be. But as long as you have a process in place to reduce your risk, even if you have to reduce your risk into a little bit of weakness, as long as you're locking in profits along the way, it's not that big of a deal, right? Because everybody is trying to make these predictions about when we're going to get a correction, when we're going to get a dip, and we will eventually get one, right? That's how markets work. They go up, they go down. I try to lighten up into some of these things. I continuously look for new setups and new opportunities, but at the same point, you got to be realistic a little bit. We're starting to get overbought again, and it's funny that everybody was looking for weakness in this month of August, and we're not even halfway through August, so that may very well be. But I will say this, to be on the optimistic side, getting a lot of good earnings coming out. And the funny thing about that, with all these good earnings reports, is, I've been hearing this phrase. I haven't heard it that much this earnings cycle about peak earnings, right? How many times have you heard peak earnings over the last couple of years? I've heard that 2 years ago. Oh, they're beating expectations, but it's probably as good as it gets, right? You're going to hear people say that too, but we've been hearing that for like 2 years now about peak earnings. So I will continue to watch the price action and the trend and realize that, hey, a dip, if we get another dip, what do you think is going to happen if we get some market volatility and a dip back to, let's say, 43.94? Probably there will be some buyers that want to get involved again. So keep that in mind, right? I like to be reducing a little bit of exposure as we grind up like this, and then be very nimble. That's kind of the way that this market has been going. Is that if you get a little bit ahead of your skis in terms of risk. The market kind of comes in a little bit, and we've certainly seen that with the rotation under the hood. So I'll leave it there, guys. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.